Good afternoon and welcome to today's Quick Bite. My name is Madeline Holzer. I'm the Education Event Specialist here at Zahn. I'd like to welcome you today. Today we have Pam Hanneman, CDT, and her Quick Bite is going to dial it down, Zirlux Transitions Sintering techniques from one of the best. Please keep in mind that we will have questions at the end of our session, a Q&A. You can use the questions tab at the bottom of your toolbar, and we will address them as time allows. Thank you, Pam. Welcome.
Thanks, Madeline. It's good to be teaming up with you again. So welcome everybody to Zahn's Quick Bite. Like Madeline said, I'm Pam Hanneman. I'm very happy to be back sharing information and educating. It's been about a year and a crazy year with COVID. So I'm super excited to be back and happy to be educating and sharing with all of you. If you tuned in before my last webinar, I was out in the Rocky Mountains living the dream there, but a lot has changed over the year. And now I'm in beautiful sunny Florida, and I'm currently the operations manager at DSG Clearwater. So that's why today's theme is all nice and beachy and sunny. And I'm sorry for you guys that are still having some cold weather, but you can enjoy these slides. Pretend you're here. So enough about me. The real reason we're here is to talk about a real game changer. It's awesome when you can bring some content and share when something is really exciting. And so I am very excited to talk to you about, Zirlux Transitions. And so what we're going to do is first talk about why the product is so special, what makes it great, what you can use it for, how this can impact your costs and help keep costs down, and also just how to sinter it and how to get the best results. So to start off, what is Zirlux Transitions? Most of you are probably familiar with the Zirlux 16 Plus. So that was a pre-shaded disc, but it was monochromatic. And so what makes this so great is that it's monolithic, meaning one material all the way through, but it's not monochromatic. So we are still maintaining a 1200 MPa, which allows you to use the material for basically whatever you want. You can use it for all on 4, all on X case, or you can use it for a single. So, I mean, we're talking about one material that you can carry in your laboratory that can take care of all your needs, but you're not compromising on strength. Usually when we need strength, we're compromising on aesthetics, but this is giving you both. And the reason for that is there is a gradient of chroma intensity throughout the disc. And again, it's 1 MPa throughout. And then they also have a patented smart incisal technology. And so if you look at the crowns I have up there, those are just like really basic crowns that I did. No staining on them at all. These were milled, they were glazed, and this is the outcome. I think you can see pretty clearly that there's a very nice transition into the incisal portion of the crowns, almost giving it like that a halo effect. It truly looks translucent. So how do they do that? They actually added a blue and a gray coloring to the incisal third of the disc, still maintaining the one material, the one strength all the way through, but adding the shading there so you don't have to. In the past, you would use a white disc and you would paint on the green state liquid. So super awesome that you can have the strength that you need to cover all restorations and not have to do the extra work of the green state shading, not having to worry about drying it or contaminating your furnaces. All right, so in the past, like I said, our options were we could use a white disc and we could paint on the blue incisal modifiers, which is great, and you can, you know, that's still an option, but to be able to move a little faster, get things done, and still have the same end result, that's a huge win. The other option we had when we really needed translucency was to use a multi-layered disc. And those were wonderful. We were super excited when those came out. We could finally get the aesthetics that we wanted from zirconia. But typically, I mean, not all, but typically, those multi-shaded discs are also multi-strength. They're typically not, they're either a multi-strength or they're not as strong. So you can't use them for all restorations. So typically they're not a 3Y zirconia, which you want if you're going to be doing an all-on X or a 6-unit bridge or even a 4-unit bridge with a ponic. You really want to use zirconia that's going to hold up in the mouth, and it's indicated for those kinds of restorations. So this is kind of the big deal for me, and why I think it's really great is not all layered discs are created equal, and it's just something to think about. There's many great brands, but it's important to know what you're using and how that can impact your restoration. So a lot of multi-layered discs, you have to also consider, are they multi-strength? They may say that it's a 3Y zirconia, but you really need to do your homework and look into it and make sure that, is it 3Y throughout, or is it 3Y in the gingival portion and then it goes to 4Y and to 5Y in the incisal? So for me, what makes me a little cautious is if I have a large bridge, where I place it in that disc when I'm nesting it is really going to impact the final strength of that bridge. So you know, I don't want to worry about that. I don't want to worry, you know, I needed to nest it really higher in the disc because I needed more translucency. I only had a large disc, you know, and I'm wondering how much of the 1200 MPa zirconia really ended up in this restoration. So when your disc is all one strength, you don't have to worry about that. And that's just kind of like a little safety net, something I don't think any of us need any more stress in our daily lab life. So if that can eliminate, you know, some of the uncertainties or questions, I think that's a really great thing. So that's why I think that the product is actually amazing and going to be a game changer. Some of you have already tried it. And the feedback I've gotten has been that customers are really loving it. But if you did try it and you didn't get a good result, I really want to talk about this, which is a really big deal. No matter what zirconia you're trying, whatever you're testing out, you really have to dial in before you can dial down on what you want. You have to control your outcome. And so one of the areas where we're kind of lacking in the laboratory is, are our furnaces calibrated? So if you took the same STL file, milled it 3 times, and you put them in 3 different furnaces, if your furnaces are not calibrated, you're going to get 3 different results. They could have exactly the same program. Each furnace could say that it's firing at 1500. That's your high temp. But the reality is, it doesn't matter what the screen says, it matters what's happening in your furnace. And you don't know what's happening in the furnace unless you are routinely calibrating. So I really need to stress that. Whether you're trying the Zirlux 16 Plus, Zirlux Transitions, or any zirconia, please do yourself a favor and make sure that you are calibrating, or you're not going to be able to evaluate that product to its fullest. You're not going to see it for its fullest potential. All right, so how do you calibrate and make sure that you're going to get accurate results? I'm not going to dive too deep into this because my friend Daniel Alter has thoroughly gone over this topic, and I believe there is a webinar through Zahn if you really want to get deep into the calibration process. But basically, you can get a calibration ring from Zahn. You would put it in the furnace, sinter it on the appropriate program, and when the ring comes out, you would measure it. Based on that measurement, there would be a conversion chart, and it would tell you what the actual temperature in your furnace was. Is it a big deal? It's a huge deal. So if you put an A3 unit into the furnace and you're expecting that crown to come out and match fairly closely to an A3 shade tab, you can get very different results. If the furnace is sintering even 30 degrees too low or too high, you will see either more chroma than you would like, or a washed out kind of unit not getting the desired shade, less chroma. It really does have a pretty big impact. So you want to make sure that you're calibrating, your oven is on point, and then you test your material. And that'll give you good results and a good starting point to gauge what you want to do next. So what you want to do next is actually decide what is the perfect sintering temperature for you. So another great thing about the transitions is that you do have a range of sintering temperatures that are acceptable, and they are within the range in the IFU. So there's a new IFU coming out. I think a new IFU has already come out, and I was really surprised to see the low temperature that you can sinter at. So 1360 is the actual low temperature that I ended up sintering on, and I liked the most. That gave me the customized result that I wanted. 1360. I think that's pretty surprising, I think, for most people to hear that number. Typically in the past, 1450 has been kind of a lower sintering temperature. Most zirconias are around 1500, 1550. Some go all the way up to 1590. So that was really shocking for me. And with my first sintering at that temperature, I was so pleased with the results, because I think my initial thoughts were that, yeah, I'm probably going to get some good chroma, but I'm going to be lacking vitality or translucency. And I was really blown away that it didn't matter what temperature I sintered it on. The vitality and the translucency remained stable, but I was able to control the chroma intensity that I was looking for without losing the translucency. So that's huge. So you can sinter it from 1360 to 1500. You can customize your results. You can play with, I would recommend starting off somewhere in the middle, seeing the result you get, and then deciding, do I need to go higher in temperature because I want a little less chroma, or do I need to go down in temperature because I want more chroma? And then customize your results. So once you've done a few firings, maybe on a couple different high temps, then you know what your ideal parameters are going to be, what you want your restoration to look like. You'll have a stable reference. And so you can see in the photo on top, that crown is A35. There's no stain on it. It was sintered at 1360. Again, no stain. I'm holding it up to an A35 tab. The photo was taken with my iPhone. I didn't use a fancy camera. I didn't use any photoshopping. There's no stain. And I think that's a more than acceptable result, especially with the demand on the laboratories today for such a fast turnaround time. There's not a lot of time to do a lot of staining and glazing. So to get a product straight out of the furnace and you can just put glaze on it and have it match the tab that closely is pretty cool. So one thing to think about when you're thinking about what your ideal program is going to be, not only do you need to think about your high temp, you also need to consider There's different cycles for different types of restorations. You have to consider your workflow, how the work moves through the laboratory, how much time you really have to do your sintering. Again, back in the day, most of us were doing our sintering and it went in the furnace at night and it was just coming out of the furnace in the morning. It was super long cycles, but we've had a lot of advancements and we're able to sinter zirconia much faster now. I'm not a fan of going super fast because I think you do compromise some vitality and quality there. But to be able to have a fast 4-hour program and be able to get out multiple batches of work per day if you're a larger lab, that just really impacts your ability to utilize lean manufacturing and faster turnaround times. If you're a smaller lab and you're not in that situation, then great. You don't have to, do multiple firings a day for 4 hours. You can do the 7-hour program. So you're basing your cycles on laboratory workflow, using your time efficiently. But the other thing that's really most important is that you are using the program that is appropriate for certain types of restorations. So just like different zirconias have recommendations for different restorations, if you have an anterior zirconia you're using, you can basically do singles or a 3-unit bridge, but it's not indicated for anything above that. Well, same thing with sintering. You have certain indications. And so we're going to go into that a little bit because this is also something you need to consider when dialing into your specific program or laboratory needs with this material. My ideal program was 1360, and I used that on the fast 4-hour program. If I'm going to use the normal 7-hour program, 1360 would be a good temperature as well. However, if I'm going to do something like an all-on-4 bridge or incredibly thick units or just a large bridge, regular traditional large bridge on top of regular prepped teeth, I think I'd like to bump the temperature up a little bit to 1370, just to ensure that, with the thicker units, the heat absorption is there. And that is based on what I felt my ideal temperature was. If you end up feeling that 1400 is your ideal temperature, then for the larger bridges, I might bump the temp up to 1410 or 1420. So let's talk about the programs a little. This is really important.
Alyssa extension 1430, Alyssa.
Sorry about that. So if you are doing a bunch of singles, which, let's face it, that is the majority of our work in the laboratory. That's about 85 to 90% of our work, our single lower molars. If you'd like to do the fast program, the 4-hour program, works great. But you really do want to limit those firings to singles. You can do copings, you could do coping bridge if you're still layering, and maybe a 3-unit bridge, but nothing with large connectors or a large ponic span. The results are fantastic. But if you overfill the furnace and you're sintering too many units at once, they're not going to absorb the heat the way they need to in that short 4 hours, and you're not going to get a desirable result. So great program, but it is important to follow the instructions and not put in more than 30 units. Typically, I'll do 1 tray, and that works out great. And so super simple program. Your 20C per minute to 1000 Celsius, and then 10C up to 1500. And then you're holding for 65 minutes. So this is the original IFU. And like we just talked about previously, that high temp, that is really up to you. As long as you're in that range of 350 to 1550, you're good. And so you will alter that final high temp to what you have chosen. So as we go through, all of these are going to say 1500, but just keep in mind you'll be selecting your own ideal high temp. If I could push you in the right direction, I think most of you would opt to end up going with 1360. I've done a lot of zirconia testing, and when you hit that sweet spot, you kind of know it. So if you're going to try it, I'd say start off at the 1360. And if you don't like it from there, then change it a little bit. But I think that's probably going to be your best starting point. All right. If you are doing a variety of restorations, say you're doing bridges, screw retained crowns over abutments, crowns over abutments, anything, long span bridge, thick ponics, you really do have to use the 7-hour program. If you use the 4-hour program, the restorations will still look fine, but you aren't going to get the intensity of chroma that you're looking for. You're not going to, those units are not going to absorb the amount of heat that they need to during a shorter cycle. So the 7-hour program would be more appropriate. And again, on this one, it does say go to 1480 as your high temp. Again, you're going to be deciding what your high temp is based on your preferences. When we are talking about long span bridges, there really are no shortcuts. We do not ever want to use a 4-hour program or even the 7-hour program. You need to give these restorations the time that they need in the furnace so that they're not warping, so that the restoration is getting the accurate amount of heat all the way through those thick parts of the bridge. Anytime I've seen anyone do shortcuts on a large span bridge, it doesn't turn out so well. So I strongly recommend, if you're doing something like an all-on-4, absolutely use your 11-hour program. So I just want to recap a little bit. It's a 1200 MPa zirconia. It has 48% translucency, made in the USA, which is wonderful. It's available in all 16 shades. And you know, it comes in all the sizes that are compatible with most of your mills. You can do any kind of restoration that you want to do with it. You're not compromising on translucency. You're not compromising on strength. So it's just a win-win-win. The patented Smart Incisal technology. So that's a pretty cool feature to have there with the blue and the gray powders that were added right into the disc. What that does is it reduces the white value. It mimics tooth's natural translucency, and sometimes, you know, not sometimes, but a lot of the times we're fighting a really high value with zirconia. You can get the shade right on the money, but that value is just a little too high. So with this, you'll see that your value is going to be much more accurate. And again, you're able to control the intensity of chroma that you desire based on the high temp, your sintering high temp that you select or that you finally decide on. I know a lot of the information that I'm sharing, I kind of repeat a lot, and I thought for a while I should stop repeating it, but it seems that there's still a lot of missing information out there, or people unaware of how they should handle zirconia in general and the products, the tools that they should be using. So I do want to touch upon that, because that also affects the outcome and your success with the material, not only with the transitions, but with any material. When you are post-processing, it's important that you're using the proper tools. These are sort of my favorites. if you're using something that is similar to it, that's fine. I like to share the ones that I think make the job easiest, get the job done quickly, but not compromise on aesthetics. I think there's only really a few really good tools that you need. So when we're cutting out of the disc, obviously, you're going to use a tapered carbide in your high speed. You're going to smooth down the remainder of the sprue with a white rubber wheel. And if you really want to get in there and make a difference and not have to touch that unit very much at all after it's sintered, which I highly recommend, the less you need to grind on the unit, the better. You don't have to worry about creating heat fractures. I do like the NTI acrylic polisher. You can just kind of go around the surface. If there's any lines, parting lines that you need to smooth out, that works great. Along with the little medium Scotch-Brite brush there on the bottom left. That scared me at first. I actually stole that idea from a laboratory I was visiting, and I was frightened when I saw them do it. But as long as you stay away from the margin, it actually leaves a pretty nice finish on the Green State Zirconia. Very smooth. It just really takes it up a notch. So when it comes out of the furnace, I mean, there's like no evidence that there was a sprue on there. There's no evidence that you took a rubber wheel to it. It just blends everything very nicely. That's kind of my new second favorite. In the middle of the screen there on the bottom, you'll see the silicone mounted wheel. That wheel is super, super, super thin and flexible. So if you do have, say, like a large bridge or a really aesthetic case and you want to do some characterizing in the Green State, that's a wonderful tool to get in approximally, because again, I know I've mentioned a million times, but we don't want to take a diamond disc and go in approximally, open up those embrasures after zirconia has been sintered. You're going to create microfractures that will lead to the restoration failing in the end. So that tool's been just a lifesaver. Not that you should need to, because if you've designed properly, you shouldn't need to go back in and redefine secondary grooves or anatomy. But if you find yourself needing to, an inverted cone is always a great choice for that. And all of these tools would work great on, the Zirlux Transitions or any product. And then also very important, after the zirconia is sintered, you want to make sure that you're using the proper tools to contour it, to seat your contacts, adjust your occlusion. One of the things that we don't realize when we're grinding on zirconia is with the wrong tool, you can generate a lot of heat. And although zirconia is very strong, the one thing that it is susceptible to is thermal shock. We love zirconia for a dental restoration because it's not a good thermal conductor. So, it doesn't quickly transfer heat or cold. But when we inflict a lot of heat on it all at once, that's when it's traumatized and you can create fractures. So make sure that you're using the correct tools when you are seating the zirconia. So the abrasive green wheels, the yellow mounted stones are really great. I personally prefer the yellow. And then always, if you've ground on zirconia, you want to make sure that you are rubber wheeling it for two reasons. If you rubber wheel it and then lightly sandblast it, you'll get a fantastic glaze in the end. You'll only have to glaze it once. You won't have to do it twice. And you especially won't have to do it twice if the zirconia you're using is already shade accurate. You won't have to do a second firing to perfect the shade. And also because we all know that stain and glaze wears away eventually. And so rough zirconia in the patient's mouth is not a good thing. We're going to cause them trauma to their opposing dentition. And obviously we don't want to do that. So zirconia is a very friendly material to opposing dentition as long as it is polished. So highly recommend polishing anywhere that you've ground on the zirconia. Some polishing wheels, you can get them in different shapes. if I can avoid using a stone at all, I will. I'll refine my margins, adjust my contacts and occlusion with more of a square edge rubber wheel, an aggressive rubber wheel. That way I'm killing two birds with one stone there. I'm doing my adjustments and I'm smoothing all at once. And you can also get the rubber wheels in a knife edge or a very thin rubber wheel that you can get into the embrasures with. And again, I'm stressing, please use a rubber wheel to open up your embrasures and not a diamond disc. Once you create that little score in the zirconia, it's kind of like scoring a tile, and eventually it's going to crack. And the more that we fire it and heat it up, that crack will grow, which leads me into the glazing process. Usually that's an area where you will see fractures, and it's not necessarily because the person glazing it did anything wrong. It's that we started a fracture well before it even got to glazing. So we want to avoid those problems altogether. You have a beautiful material, you made a, this beautiful restoration, and then to have it fracture in the end because we're not using the right tools is a pretty big shame, and obviously that's not very profitable for you. The one thing that is unique about this materials glazing process is they do recommend that you use vacuum when glazing, and I have the glazing program up there for you. And I'll be honest, I have glazed with vacuum and without, and I got great results both ways. But the IFU does say to use vacuum. And another thing we want to touch upon when glazing is if you have a bunch of single units, and just like with the sintering, you can go a little bit faster when you have thin single units. You want to, on the chart, you can see that they're giving you the parameters for cool down. I just want to make it nice and easy for you, since everybody has different ovens and they all open differently, cool down differently. Just the basic rule of thumb is if you have singles and small units, 65 Celsius per minute cool down is acceptable. But if you have something like an all-on-4, anything less, anything more than 45 C per minute, you are putting yourself at risk for fractures. So it seems like a long time to cool down, but it's absolutely necessary. So large bridges, you a minimum of 45 C per minute. If you can tolerate waiting 30 C per minute, that's even better. But those are pretty much the keys to success for using the Zirlux Transitions. I'm just gonna go over it one more time, right? So I really want to get this the point across. I hope I am. And it's one zirconia. It covers all restoration types. It's stable MPa throughout. It has built-in smart incisal. Translucency is not compromised when you adjust your programs for higher or lower temperatures to achieve the chroma you want. That's the big thing for me. I can achieve the exact shade I want, intensity of chroma, and I do not have to worry about translucency being affected. So that's, that's really great. And to be able to use it on all of the restorations that you produce, that allows you to not to have to inventory multiple kinds of zirconia. Or even if you're carrying the same brand, but you're carrying 3 different kinds of the same brand, different MPAs, because on some cases you need that extra translucency. You're getting it all in one. So you're lowering your inventory, you're not compromising on aesthetics, and it just makes everything easy, and I like easy. I did steal this picture also from Daniel Alter because I wanted to show work that I didn't do and show that others are having this same success. So I thought this was a beautiful picture that I snagged from him, really showing the translucency and the vitality of the material. And since I'm in Florida these days, I figured instead of my usual Rocky Mountain pictures, I'd show you some pictures of what you do down here in Florida, and that's pretty much swimming with manatees. Not too bad, nothing to complain about there. I hope that I didn't run through too fast for you guys. I'm open to any questions that you may have. Actually, I didn't run too fast. I went over. It went by really quick. If you have any questions, now would be the time to ask. You can ask me about the Zirlux Transitions or the Zahn tools or other materials that we talked about, and happy to answer those questions for you.
Thank you so much, Pam. Loved the teeth on that manatee.
I know I'm a little dorky, but I can't help it, you know?
Hey, make it fun. We appreciate everyone for joining us today. We did have a few questions. You had already addressed them in your presentation,
Okay.
so there's no need to rehash on those. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining since we are over time. And just keep in mind, we do have another quick bite with Pam on June 9th. For practical techniques for predictable results. So if you are interested, we implore you to please join us for that quick bite as well. I'd like to thank you all for joining, and thank you so much, Pam, for your presentation. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. See you soon.
Bye.